Like few other plots of land, Philadelphia's Independence Mall tells the story of America's grand opening. It's where tourists walk with the founding generation: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Franklin, Madison, and a cast of thousands that included spouses and children, and most certainly slaves. It's a story that is still evolving but remains under the watchful eye and watchful care of documents left by these extraordinary leaders. With the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center opening right here in Philadelphia in the historic space around the Liberty Bell in Independence Hall, America's story will be offered with a little more accuracy and care. Because in addition to understanding the unique character of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, the center will add a perspective on a third document essential to America's founding: the Bible. Let's talk to one of the visionaries behind an effort to tell America's best story. Stay with us. It's a pretty audacious goal. Build a new museum on Independence Mall with a commitment to storytelling and interactive technology rivaling any major museum in the world. But then, without focusing on a single historical figure, art collection, or a period of history, expand it to prove the influence of one book, the Bible, on the country's entire history from founding to present day. Well, today that goal is a reality with the opening of Philadelphia's newest major attraction, the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center. We have one of the project's prime movers behind the project with us today in the studio, Alan Crippen. But first, we want you to watch this.
In the spring of 1784, after signing the Treaty of Paris and officially ending the American Revolution, John Jay penned these words to his oldest son: "The Bible is the best of all books, for it is the word of God and teaches us the way to be happy in this world and in the next. Continue therefore to read it and to regulate your life by its precepts." Now, John Jay, in case you're fuzzy on your founding fathers, served as president of the Continental Congress and became the first Chief Justice of the United States. He also ended slavery as governor of New York in 1799, which was very cool of him. Later, he served as the second president of the American Bible Society and believed that order and freedom, cohesiveness, and liberty could not exist apart from faith, which is interesting. So, what's the story here? For a nation that constitutionally protects the freedom of religion, it sure seems like the Bible has some sort of special relationship with the American ideal of liberty. Shall we? I'm gonna start with a trip to the center of the faith and liberty universe: Independence Mall and the home of American Bible Society.
This project is about telling a living and breathing story for all people, all faiths or even no faith, and inviting them to discover the very real relationship we have with the Bible, from our founding through today.
By illuminating both the deeply personal and broadly historical influence of the scriptures on us as a nation, we are going to spark curiosity for many, many people.
Over 41 million people visit Philadelphia each year, and 2.5 million specifically come to tour Independence Mall. So we expect as many as 400,000 people in the first year.
It's fascinating to think about the things that make America, America. The things we take for granted, and the things we could be in danger of losing if we're not careful to remind ourselves what they're rooted in. This is a huge project on a lot of levels: significance, investment, innovation, scale. So ultimately, why do it?
That's easy. It's the future. People of goodwill, engaged with the Bible, they change the world. And rather than a divided and polarized America, we envision a transformed America, a renewal of civility and generosity for the common good. Look, people are smart. God is at work. And our role is to build them a compelling reason to visit. And from there, we trust them to decide for themselves.
This is so exciting, Alan Crippen, and we're just delighted to have you here on behalf of the Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center to talk a little bit about it. Tell the audience now. Of course, I've been mesmerized by your talks. I've been down there, and for a while now. I just love it when you talk, and I find it also interesting and enlightening and wonderful. But tell our viewers how you came to be a part of this.
Pat Murdoch drafted me. I was running a nonprofit organization called the John Jay Institute. I've been working in
which we know about. We've had some of the folks here from John Jay.
That's wonderful. I've been working in student ministry for years, really committed to forming leaders with the appropriate, I guess, let's say, spiritual and intellectual formation for public service. So that was my career trajectory. A little bit of teacher, a little bit of chaplain, and all that sort of mixed in. And I created an institute called the John Jay Institute. I'd expected to be there for a while. I didn't want to overstay, right? Founders have a tendency to stay around too long. And Pat Murdoch took me out to coffee and said, I feel that I need to ask you this question, and please say no, but would you ever consider leaving that which you created to come help us build the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center? And I was flattered. I guess my initial thought was, well, this is really exciting. It's a great organization.
Had you ever built a museum before?
I'd never built a museum before. So my initial thought was, let me think about that, but it's probably no. And yet there were a number of people who I shared that story with, and to a person, everyone said, we think this is the assignment that God wants you to do. And so it really, in a few weeks of discernment, I said yes to the task, and I'm very pleased to have joined the team.
What a wonderful opportunity! What a big job! People in the country nominally believe in God. I think probably a majority of Americans would say, not, if you took a poll, they would self-identify as God-believing people.
Sure.
And maybe as self-identify as Christians, but the percentage of people who deeply believe, who are filled with God's Spirit, is much smaller. How do you when people hear the word Bible, it hasn't been the natural inclination to say, I want to see that, right? I want to learn more about that. It's kind of like they run the opposite way.
Yeah.
So tell me, how have you been able to take this Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center and use it as a way to reach people for what God's Word has done with our country?
Sure. You're right. The Bible used to be considered the good book.
Yeah.
That's how people referred to it. But of late, people perceive the Bible to be a book about outdated mores, not a book about love, a book about hate, a book about judgment, a book about condemnation. And it's none of these things. So how do we restore the reputation of the Bible as the good book? I think the short answer is we've got to get people in it, right? People need to read it for themselves and encounter its life-changing message. But we live in a society that is, I would say, post-Christian, certainly postmodern, and post-literate.
So tell people what, for people who are in the world of scholarship.
Sure.
We all understand, but tell for our viewers how you define post-Christian.
Yeah, I think similar to what you described, that really the tenets rather of the faith are no longer held. There's perhaps an openness to the existence of God, but not a really strong engagement with a good book. Church attendance is down, Bible engagement is down. So there's just not a lot of knowledge about the faith, about the Bible. So we're speaking into really what cultural assumptions there are. Mm-hmm. So that in terms of postmodern, it means people have lost confidence in one large overarching story. There are all kinds of stories, but there's no overarching story to make sense of it all. So truth is what's true for you and what's true for me, but there's no grand truth, so to speak. And that's intellectually what's happening in many of our universities. And then when I say post-literate, I don't mean that people can't read, it's that they don't read, right? We're in an age of video and images and YouTube segments and so on. And so it seems like the deck is stacked against picking up scripture and reading these wonderful old stories. And so I guess to speak into that particular environment, the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center was conceived, and it happens to be placed in Philadelphia, right, the metropolis of the American founding. This is a good book that has had a role in the founding of America, but more in the founding, in the entire experience of America from the founding to the present. And a lot of people don't know that story. Yeah. We like to say it's the third document. John Adams said that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. So in his view at least, the Constitution itself depended upon a moral and religious people, depended on virtuous people to sustain small r Republican institutions. What's the source of that virtue? A lot of the founders believed that the source of that virtue was the Bible. So our organization, American Bible Society, which is the holding company of the Faith Liberty Discovery Center, it was founded in 1816 by many American founders. Elias Boudinot, John Jay, John Quincy Adams was one of our early vice presidents, Chief Justice Marshall, etc. These were men and families who were committed to ensuring that every American home had a Bible. They had risked their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, right, in a revolution to establish a Republican form of government and to reject a monarchy. But what is the weakness of republics? The weakness of republics, as the students they were, was that republics need a virtuous people. Liberty needs virtue. Yeah. And so, again, if the Bible's a source of that virtue, that's a necessary ingredient, right, to sustaining and perpetuating this republic, hence American Bible Society. So fast forward, if we've lost touch with that book, right, if we've lost any commitment to the grand story, let alone the other stories in there, then is it any wonder, right, that we have some of the troubles that we have today?
Yeah. Well, what I really like about it is, I've had a chance to visit, of course, and take a tour of the Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center. And what I like about it is the way that it engages us right where we are. So it doesn't presuppose that you know all this great history, right, but it engages you, and it's so interesting to see who the founding fathers and mothers were of this country and what they did. Not just to know them as names, from a history book, but to see them as human beings and to know what they did, the risks that they took, the depth of their belief in God and their hope for the country that hadn't yet been formed, the country in which we now live, but at that point hadn't yet been formed. And then to see the progression of that, and then at the end to see some of the great faces, like James Cash Penney. I didn't realize, J.C. Penney, yes, yeah, of course, but he started out not as a big chain, but just a little store, but he was a person of faith, and I didn't know that, but I learned it at the Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center, and you learn about some of the people who are well-known names, Billy Graham, Martin Luther King, and some of what they did and how they helped to shape the country. But then you meet all these other people who you may not have heard of before, who had a huge impact on what our country is today. People like Sojourner Truth. The names go on and on and on. And I love that, and I love the way it's interactive, so that you can explore on your own, at your own speed, your own pace, as you learn about them. So it's wonderful and brilliant. I'm surprised that you hadn't before. I thought you were going to say, like, well, this is the fifth museum that I've created, but you and your team, your colleagues, have done a marvelous job, and I hope and pray that everybody listening will come and visit the Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center. So tell people what they should expect if they're a guest. If they come to the Faith Liberty, what should they expect?
Yeah, well, it's not a museum, or at least not a museum like your grandfather experienced. It's a Category 1 museum. It's in a completely
is that like a hurricane?
Class.
Category 1, Category 2.
Maybe it'll have that sort of cultural effect. High tech, as you've indicated. A lot of museums conserve artifacts. We have a few artifacts, but it's mostly media, and media done in very savvy ways to, again, reach this post-literate
I got
generation.
a lamp when I went there.
Yes.
Literally a lamp, and the lamp was wonderful and interactive. I was able to get more information from the exhibits. I could pick which ones I wanted more information on and gather that info in my lamp. And then at the end, my lamp kind of told me what I had seen.
That's right.
Which is
yeah. The technology here it's immersive and interactive, and the lamp is the signature technology of the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center. So you're right. Every visitor gets a lamp, and they also get a card with a code on it, and that code allows you to access a personal portal after the fact. So literally, we figured out a way to make the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center stick. You can go through and experience all the exhibits and the content, but with your lamp allows you to gather what's of interest to you, what inspires you. And there are also exhibits that it will trigger interaction with. So the visitors are carrying this lamp, and it's a really cool, sleek, ergonomic, very modern, hip instrument. Made in Switzerland. It's $285 a piece, right? And it's an artificial intelligence product. So it puts us on the cutting edge. There's no museum like this in Philadelphia. There's an earlier technology of it in New York. So this is a really special technology for Philadelphia and for the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center to introduce. And it's a whole lot of fun. So there's one particular gallery. We base all these galleries on values. What are the values that unite us? Faith, right? Liberty, justice, hope, unity, and love. The Unity Gallery experience is a lot of fun because when you walk through, and you remember this, you're waving your lamp, and there's all kinds of sparkles, and it's almost a starry, starry night Van Gogh experience. And up on the walls of this very large hall appear the things you've gathered, whether that's an image of Martin Luther King Jr. or an image of William Penn or a picture of the Charter of Privileges of Pennsylvania, or whatever was inspiring to you, it shows up. You gathered this, and it tracks and sort of measures the value that you most resonate with. Is it love? Is it justice? Is it liberty? What is it? So you learn something about yourself, and you do it in a really fun way, and you're walking through with perhaps family members or friends, and this sort of starry night is also connecting you on what binds you together in terms of shared values. So it's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I liked it. I felt like almost like I was the light of the world. It's
Indeed.
Like the scriptures say to us, which is so very wonderful. But the technology is amazing. When we come back, Alan, I want to ask you whether you're hopeful about the future of the country, this great land of ours. And is it possible that the Faith, Liberty, and Discovery Center arrived a few minutes too late to make a difference, or not? But in any case, we're going to ask those questions of our great guest, Alan Crippen, when we come back. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
My guest is Alan Crippen. Some of you may know him from the work he did with the John Jay Institute, an extraordinary organization that trains future statesmen for lives of service. But today he's here as the representative of Philadelphia's newest attraction, the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center, and that's what we're talking about. So great to continue this conversation with you, Alan.
It's great to be with you.
And you are a great scholar, and you understand statesmanship. You know so well the history of our country and the role in which the Bible has played in the formation of our country and the forward movement of our country. So everybody listening would love to get your sense going forward is kind of, what do you see for us? I mean, are we kind of nearing the end of this great experiment called the United States of America? I mean, are we at a point where there were so many of us are at each other's throats and we're in such disagreement that we can't move forward together? Or do you sense that there's yet hope that this is indeed the greatest country in the world, that all things are possible, certainly with God all things are possible, and that there's hope for us as a country to come together and to move forward and to be what Ronald Reagan called that city, that shining city on the hill?
It's a great question. It's a sobering question. Historically, republics are not long-lived, right? They're pretty vulnerable constitutional frameworks. But I have to say I'm hopeful. And I'm hopeful because, one, I'm a theologian, and theologians are supposed to be hopeful, right? We believe in a God of hope. And we embrace the good book, right, which is about hope. And it's a book that's full of all kinds of last-minute deliverances. And these stories, I think particularly of the Exodus story, right, that the Pharaoh's army is chasing the people of Israel across to Egypt, and they're up against the Red Sea. Right. It looks pretty bad.
Yeah, pretty bleak.
Pretty bad. And God tells Moses, stand and see the salvation of the Lord, and the sea parts, right, and the people of God go through. This story has animated Americans for centuries, right? It was a story that captivated the patriots, because they viewed the King of England as the Pharaoh, right? And so there was even early proposals that the Great Seal of the United States capture that biblical story. But the African-American slave narrative, right? It was African-Americans who looked to this story and kept falling back on it to sustain them through the struggle for freedom. The Civil Rights Movement. So you think about the most difficult times in American history, whether it's the formation of the nation with the Patriots, whether it's the wrestling with slavery that ended up in a war that left 700,000 people dead, whether it's pushing forward ideals of justice in the Civil Rights Movement. All three of these major chapters in American history were in many ways animated and motivated by biblical stories, and particularly the Exodus story. Our moniker at the Faith Liberty Discovery Center is that faith guides liberty toward justice. That faith guides liberty toward justice. Liberty is not, it's not an intrinsic good by itself. Liberty can lead to kind of crazy things, and it has in the past. There were two revolutions, the French Revolution and the American Revolution. The French Revolution was a bloodbath. The French Revolution had guillotines, and tens of thousands of people died by the guillotine, and it ended up in a world war with 7 million people dead by the time Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo. That was the French Revolution. The American Revolution, certainly a war, certainly casualties, but it produced a far more stable and just society. The French had 5 republics, the American 1 republic. We still have that same republic. That republic is certainly challenged, right? People are still crying out for justice. People still want to hold on to these ideals. And I guess the good news is we have these ideals to hold on to. These are in our DNA. And these ideals didn't come from anywhere. They actually came from the Bible. And that's part of the telling and part of the, I guess, exploration and experience of discovery that we offer at the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center. Where did these values come from? We want to help the visitor discover those, not in a formal teaching way, not in what the academics would call a didactic way, but more Socratic. You come, you explore with your lamp, you engage, you find out for yourself, you discover for yourself these stories that you so beautifully recalled in the segment.
You're so kind. Thank you so much, Alan, Pat Murdoch, and all of our friends at Faith and Liberty Discovery Center for taking on what, from a distance at least, looked like an impossible task. Visit faithandliberty.org to schedule your visit. It'll certainly change your life, and it'll also give you a clearer understanding of what the founders were up to when they came up with this great experiment called America. We'll be right back.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And and tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
And now we're going to talk with our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, this is a great show, and I think one of the things that Alan said that I remembered is this notion of these last-minute rescues, that the story of America is filled with biblical kinds of dramatic scenes where you think it's all over. And I know a lot of our viewers, because we see the emails that come in, really feel a certain kind of despair about the direction of the country. They think, it cannot get more incivil than this, it can't get uglier than this, and especially if after you watch this program you flip over to one of the 24-hour news stations, you get a very different view of where America is. And both sides are saying it's over. In comes a perspective, an ancient perspective in the good book that says it's probably not over. There's still work to be done both for us and for the country.
Yeah. Well, I liked what one of our great presidents said about us being that city, that shining city on a hill.
Yeah.
And which speaks to the hope of what we can be and what we really believe we were created to be. This country is meant to be an example to the rest of the world, and there's still hope. There's still hope. And
it's a big city.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of little lights.
Yeah.
That it's that aerial that view from space of the United States, and seeing that there are these little tiny dots that form this big bright light that is America. And for many people, my mother's side of the family coming from the Philippines, and just knowing that what Americans did in World War II, and why in the Philippines the approval rating for Americans hovers around 90%. Every year Gallup does a poll. You think, well, why is that?
Yeah.
And it is because of the uniqueness of the American story, and it's because of the uniqueness of our heritage from our Christian faith.
Absolutely. This is still a place that people want to be because of all the hope that's here. My mother came to this country from the West Indies with that in mind, and my relatives from other countries as well, with the hope of becoming Americans.
And they weren't disappointed.
No, they were not. No, they were not. Yeah. Well, remember, it's called the Faith and Liberty Discovery Center, and it's located not far from where I'm sitting on Independence Mall in Philadelphia. If you haven't been to Philly in a while, it's time to see all that you've been missing. This is your story. This is our story. I do pray today's program encourages you that America's story isn't over yet, and neither is yours. You and I have been given a mission to love the Lord with all of our hearts and soul, mind, and strength, and our neighbors as ourselves. So that's what this program is all about. Thanks in advance for dropping me a quick message in the comment box at joewatkins.org. It means a lot to me and our guests to know how this program is helping and encouraging you. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching.
Can't wait to get over there.
Oh, I've been over there. I loved it, Jeff.
Yeah.
It was so exciting. I mean, I must have been.
Did you know how to use the tour?
I did. But the time just flew by. I mean,
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.